Hey guys, welcome to another deck spotlight. Today I have for you Reflect Shadows. So this is one of those decks that, when we were drafting in the pre-releases, we're like, man, I just really love this tribe. Like, I'm a tribal player from Magic the Gathering. Sorry to name drop, but for those that don't know, like, the Fairy deck from Modern, or the wasn't extended, or the Modern Merfolk deck, I really like decks that synergize. They have like a clan feel to them. And they're like, yeah, this is what this tribe is going to do. They're very dedicated, have a lot of synergistic things that go for them. And honestly, that's what the Shadow deck is. Like, the Fairy deck was awesome to play because it was, hey, Flame Sprite gives them all a boost, or Vivian boosts them all. But this is one that I really, really loved, and I really like the theme of it. The two archetypes I'm known for personally is either combo-based deck or more of attrition-based deck, where you're playing things like, well, not directly in this game, but Soul Hunt is not a great example. Any kind of discarding effects, but now we have the Scorn of Dark Alice. You're playing Spiral of Despairs. You're playing Narthel which I really wanted to fit in this deck, but I didn't want to lower the saturation of the Shadow Resonator so that Alice's Dark Soldier is always going to hit for the deck. So this is something that we saw, and it's there's great because with Reflect you have the filtering. You don't have to run 4 of everything anymore. And one thing I was trying to decide right before posting this was, the Stoning Deaths, do we still really need 4? We can put another techie card in there, but I love tribal decks. I love the synergy that this deck has, and it's a personal favorite of mine, and it's been doing well locally. I haven't run it through the gauntlet of, say, Valentina 2.0, Bahamut, things like that, but, throw in some Death Sites, and you're probably going to have a little bit better matchup. So I'll talk about what the ruler adds, I'll go into the stone deck, and then I'll go into the main board cards themselves and explain to you guys why this is probably one of my favorite, flavor decks to play, thanks to the Twilight Wanderers set. Alright guys, up first we're going to talk about the ruler, the Wonder Twins, Reflect, Refrain themselves. I know you're so sick of probably seeing all these different decks with Reflect. I will say you can play Dark Alice, and you're going to need to build the deck a little bit differently number-wise to do so. But there was a Dark Alice that made top 4 at our 30-player event, 28-player, sorry, event that we just had this past weekend. So that's something to take into consideration. I personally went with Reflect because I have a few techie number choices and other things like that. So what makes Reflect good? What makes Reflect work for this deck? For this one, the biggest thing is card filtering. When you're playing a more mid-rangey or control grindy deck and you're drawing nothing but, say, Stony to Death when a Bahamut is attacking you, that doesn't help you win that game. So being able to see the extra cards every turn really helps push that match in your favor. So that's why I personally went with Reflect, and I have a few techie choices. And the pump also is sometimes going to be relevant. Then on the other side we have Refrain. This one for me is mostly the ability just to tutor up cards that we need. So the Shadow Clan themselves, or Shadow Tribe, Shadow Resonators, whatever you want to call them, a lot of them either have awakening effects or they have certain abilities that, if you want to bounce your own Melgus, let's say, I'll get into that later, you're adding value and you have more plays that you can do thanks to Refrain. Sometimes you just need to bounce their Resonator, and that's fine too. But it's something that really adds a lot to the deck itself. So it's something that you really need to consider, am I going to use Dark Alice for the board wipe and then the target attack that it has, or do I want to go the more toolboxy route with Refrain? One of the disclaimer I will say is I didn't have time to fit Orb in this deck or test Orb in this deck, but I 100% think that's something that you should do if you're building a Reflect Refrain deck. More often than not, you at least want even just 1 Orb, because it allows you to untap Refrain and use 2 abilities in that turn, which can really do a lot for you. So, getting into the stone deck, if you've been playing Forcible for a while, or if you've been following any of the other dark-based decks, Dark Fire just really goes well together. So we're playing 4 Scorch Veils. Flames of the Outer World is just still an insane card. Having sideboard options like Crime and Punishment or Rapid Decays. Garden of Eden is a little bit less, Crimson Garden of Eden, I believe is the card name. A lot less relevant, but at least, there's still these sideboard fire cards that you can filter. I think the other card I would really consider, or the other color attribute I would really consider would probably be Light, because I really want to see Seth in this deck. It's just another card that would add so much value for it. So 4 stones to get it that way. Then we have 4 of our just basic dark stones. Turns out we're playing a darkness deck. You need 4 basic dark stones. Nothing fancy there. 1 of Grubalesta. Mostly just because, hey, sideboard it into Abdul, be my guest if you want to do that. But more importantly, it allows you to neg something by 200 and then use Flames to the Outer World to deal 1,000 damage. So in doing that, you're going to kill 99% of Resonators in the game that way. So it's one of those things that you just want to auto-include. And then it wouldn't be any deck ever if you didn't have a Pure Stone. Buffing your own Resonators is great. Having the ability to give something essentially plus 400 in a turn if you do it at the start of your turn, then do it after recovery. Getting that little bit of extra damage can really help increase the clock for a deck that is usually grindy, but when it flips the switch, it really can get into that aggressive mode. So going into our 1-drops, we have 2 Barrier of Shadows. Yes, I main deck this card. Yes, I hate playing against Valentina 2.0. Yes, I hate playing against other Reflect decks. So having this main board, and again, we're playing Reflect, so this is one of those instances where if I was playing Dark Alice, I probably wouldn't have these main board, but because I'm playing Reflect and because I can filter them away, because I can tutor for them, because they're good in shutting down other Reflect decks, I have 2 main. I think this is a very, very good card going forward, and is something that more people need to be playing, honestly. If you have Ruler's Memoria, it only costs 1 dark. It's very easily splashable in just about every deck that people are going to be playing. So if you're not playing it already or have some kind of dedicated card to hate out Valentina or some other strategies like that, I would very strongly recommend doing so. 4 of the Dark Joan of Arc. This card, it's only a 300/300. It's pretty, unfortunately, average costed, but the ability, what it really synergizes with, is with Elizabeth, or just pretty much any other card that you're going to be playing, is that whenever something of your opponent's dies or goes to graveyard, they have to tap something down. So in combining this with, if you just want to clear the way for blockers, or if you just want to do some kind of combat trick, you really need to just tap their guys and get them out of the way. It does wonders for clearing the board for you. Then we have 4 Dark Alice's Familiar. Call it Scout, my bad, wrong one. So many Dark Alice based cards. This one allows you to reveal the top card of your deck, hit a Shadow Resonator, you get to draw it. So this is a form of pseudo card advantage. It's not going to hit every time, but we're playing 22, I think is my final count, Shadow Resonators. So there's a better than not chance that it's going to hit. It's not going to hit every time. It feels bad when it doesn't, but it's still a 1-drop that you want to play in the deck just because you're playing such a high count of Shadows already. Then we have 4, the Dark Scorn of Dark Alice. My apologies. I can't even begin to talk about how insane this card is. Just getting the information from seeing their hand and also discarding a Resonator really does a lot for you in that matchup. So if they're playing especially a more mid-rangey based deck, it can really, it broadcasts what their next couple turns are, and is an auto 4 of include in any darkness-based deck that I think that you're going to be running. So a card I strongly recommend if you're playing a darkness-based deck. Then have 2 Shadow Assassins. Again, because I was playing Reflect Refrain, this is another one of cards I'd probably not be playing if I was playing Dark Alice, simply because it's 2 of. It's not great in a lot of matchups, but it's great in more Resonator-heavy focus decks. We were seeing a lot of Arthur decks in our locals as well, so I wanted to have a tutorable answer for Arthur's. And plus it's a Shadow, so of course he's going to be able to hit off other things as well. 2 Spiral of Despair. So this is a card that we're playing a discard-heavy base deck. It's something that maybe you want a 3rd of, so you're always going to see it in the early game, but it's against other control decks. Forcing them to discard 2 cards is going to help you, push the matchup in your favor a little bit more when people are usually trying to grind out the game or save their counter spells for the bigger threats in the game. And then there's 3 Flames of the Outer World. This card, again, probably should be a 4 of, but is just insane utility. The fact that they can't counter it or they can't do anything in response to it really helps you, again, trigger Elizabeth or have ways that you're going to be able to push through damage, hits J-Rulers. This card's nothing new. This is why we're playing Fire, and the card just has insane value with it. Probably one of my favorite cards in the deck right now is 4 Dark Faria. This card has just been absolutely insane. So as a side note, one of the ways to beat the other Reflect decks is to have a very low curve and to have cards that are going to generate value so that the opponent doesn't want to bounce them. So having things like seeing extra cards or having the Dark Faria to do Awakening again or things of that nature are really, really good to play against those other Reflect decks. On top of that, it's also an Anthem, so it really creates a board presence or a field advantage where your opponent doesn't want it on the board, so they have to kill it because it's buffing the rest of your team. or it makes it where they bounce it, but then they have to worry about losing a resonator when you just play it the next turn for 4 and get to kill one of their guys for it. So even bouncing it, your own Dark Faria is a great way to just clear the board of more things. So we have 4 Stoning to Deaths. This is just a card that, again, destroying resonators is great. Everyone's playing Protections of the Farrier, finding ways to prevent the next damage, so we want something that says destroy. So destroy-based effects are definitely going up in value, it seems. So Stoning to Death has been great as a 4/0 for us. Going into our 3-drops, the card that I hinted at so much, and the card that really just ends the game on herself is Elizabeth. So this is one of those cases where you want to combo with Dark Gene to where you attack into something, you kill it, you know, she untaps, you tap another resonator down, you attack into that resonator, kill that resonator, because then it's a 600, 600, or 600, 900, and then you untap, swing at them for 1,000. So not only is she great for board clearing, if you have something like Endless Night where you're getting a couple cards killed off at one time, you're creating multiple triggers for her, she can really do a lot of damage out of nowhere. Speaking of Endless Night, we play 2. This is a card I put in the deck against, you know, the Digital Underground deck for, you know, sometimes you just have to kill your own resonator to do the shuffle effect for the Cheshire Cat and force them to have to shuffle. Turns out they'll just blind flip Yamada on you and it feels really, really bad, but, you know, it's a card that gets rid of Percival's as well if you're trying to fight through that kind of a wall, so it's definitely a very, very interesting card how it's been playing out lately, and I think 2 is a fine for having the deck since we're playing Reflect. Another card I might not play any of if I was playing Dark Alice. So little changes like that are, you know, the biggest of difference when playing the 2 rulers. Then our last techie choice of why I'm playing Reflect and not anything else. Rizard has been a very interesting card for us. It was a 2, then it was a 3 of, and now it's a 2 of again. When it works against the mid-range decks, it's absolutely insane value that you're going to generate. You just get rid of one of your 1-drops you don't care about, and then you have an often 1,000 body, and they just have to sacrifice, you know, their Arthur or their insert 5 or 6 drop here, because you have enough tools to play removal for the other threats, to where Rizard's always going to hit their biggest threat that you want. I killed the Mephistopheles this way, you know, things like that just feel great. And then the last 3-drop in the deck that I know this is going to surprise a lot of people. You might have saw it in the overview. One of Necronomicon. Yep. I went there. Just because Reflect Refrain can tutor for it, and when I was playing this deck, the biggest thing I realized is like, man, it's super grindy, it's, you know, really resource driven, a lot of card for card, have to get advantage every single time. Like, you know, at any point when I was testing this deck in the 2 different weeks that I played it against a variety of decks, it's like, if I just had Necronomicon here and just like recycled stuff out of my graveyard, I'd win this game, like on the spot. So yes, you're still gonna have to play around your Reflect Refrain opponent, like bait out, say, a Stoning to Death that eats Reflexibility, so then you can play Necronomicon. It's still going to take work to resolve this card, but I promise you it's going to be worth it if you're playing this deck in your locals or whatever event that you might be playing it at. So it's definitely been a blast to play, and I think this card really helps it out a ton. And then the last card that we have, Dark Melgus. So it was Arthur in the original build that we had at top 4 or top 8 at a different event. I tested it. Arthur just doesn't do anything against the other Reflect Refrain decks. So I asked on the Facebook group, and someone actually gave this suggestion, and it's perfect. Like, we have the fire, so we're going to be playing, you know, we have the chance to awaken him if needed, and then it's just an 1,000 body that they have to deal with. So again, you know, when there's things like Flames of the Outer World, or you're dealing, you know, 600-800 damage, or you're dealing 700 damage off Lancelot's effect, all those things considered, 1,000 body is just big enough to just stick around sometimes. And again, if they're playing Reflect, they don't want to bounce this. They're going to lose another Resonator if you pay with the Awakening. So this gives you a lot of opportunity. And again, why I said this ruler works so well with this deck. You can bounce a Dark Faria if you want to kill something. You can bounce this if you don't have Dark Faria to deal 1,000 damage to something. There's just a lot of utility that you're getting out of Reflect and Refrain. And really, that's what makes it so good. And that's what makes the meta so open that it is right now. Yeah, I know no one likes seeing, oh, 6 Reflect decks made top 8, 1 Valentina, and then 1 Bahamut or something. At least the different decks, like, you know, there's 2 Alice's Worlds in there, there's a red aggro, there's the fairy deck, there's the shadow deck, there's, you know, the Dark Alice that has a sideboard Reflect Refrain. There's a lot of different ways that people are using and really getting to the value out of Reflect that lets them say, hey, I want to do a couple things with this deck. I want to try out some new stuff. And it's really just great that we have this ruler that is so open to playing a bunch of different stuff. So I think it's, I wish it was changed a little bit. I wish it was, I wish for this, I wish for that, but what have you. In the meantime, I'm just going to appreciate the fact that it lets me play these tribal-based decks that, honestly, they probably wouldn't have been playable if, let's say, we didn't have Reflect. It would probably just be like Valentina and Bahamut. The other rulers are just not as strong in power level comparison, but having the ability to filter and to tutor and do all these other things are so strong that they let these tribal decks really shine, and the advantage that they have, or the card advantage, the card filtering, that they generate really lets you churn through the deck, find those answers you need, and really pushes the deck in the way that you need it to go. So that's the Reflect Shadow deck, guys. It was fun to play in locals. I'd probably, again, if you can, find a couple room for some orbs in there. Try out a few different cards to your liking. If you want to play Dark Alice, play Dark Alice. But please go back, watch this video again, take out those cards I said to take out and put them for something else, because you really want to have a deck that's focused on the 3s and 4s card quantity, and not these more 1s and 2s I have, thanks to cards Reflect's filtering ability or Refrain's tutor ability. So please keep that in mind in your deck building in the future, and the pros and cons that are presented when saying Dark Alices versus Reflect and Refrain. So that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you for watching. Make sure to drop us a comment or like the video. Subscribe if you're not subscribed to us already. And let us know what other deck spotlights you would like to see in the future. We're doing a series of them, so we'll have some more for you guys. But again, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next Force of Will deck spotlight. Have a good one. Thanks for watching. If you want to see more, make sure to hit subscribe or check out one of our other video series. And don't forget to stop by the Force of Will US website for articles, a helpful database, and more.